name, which means believer in Arabic. I think I had a pretty decent upbringing. My mom and my dad, I lived on a house with both of them. They was married. My dad from Camden, New Jersey. My mom from Portsmouth, Virginia. My dad, he always joke around and say I'm from two of the most dangerous cities on the East Coast. Is Camden. I know people familiar with Camden, New Jersey, how that was. And Portsmouth is one of the worst, most dangerous cities in Virginia. So everything was smooth. And I had a pretty much a good upbringing until probably when I was like 10, 12 years old, about 10 years old, I had a tragic accident. My brother died tragically. He drowned, and I was there. We was going out ice skating as kids, Lake Frozo. We out there ice skating, fell like the lake, and he drowned and he died, And it seemed like from that point on, everything went left. If you look at statistically, when a family loses a child, especially parents lose a child, they usually end up in divorce. It's like it makes the statistics go up to like 90% or higher, And everybody was trying to cope in their own way. My dad stopped drinking. My mom left him. So me and my mom, we moved back to the grandma house. My grandma stayed out in a neighborhood in Portsmouth called London Oaks. And people in Virginia, they're familiar with that's one of the worst neighborhoods in Portsmouth, So that's the environment I grew up in, dealing with that. So, as an adult now, I'm starting to see how what happened to me affected my decision making. Because I was always the one willing to do the most riskiest, wildest thing. You know what I'm saying? Because now I know that I was just trying to mask the pain I was going through with adrenaline. You know what I'm saying? Anything that can make me forget about what I'm experiencing and really don't nobody else know what I'm experiencing. All my closest family, friends know I had a brother that died, but the guys in the neighborhood, they already know. So, I think I was an adrenaline junkie at an early age, and it led me to a life of, started stealing cars. And my first stole a car child when I was 13 years old, went upstate, just getting caught up in the system at an early age, dealing with that. So that was my upbringing. It started off good, tragic accident happened, things went left, and and that's what it ended me up in the project in Portsmouth, trying to deal with it like that.
Okay, so besides the brother that passed away from drowning, do you have any other siblings?
Yeah, I got two sisters, Mia and Naja Neely. They was younger. They wasn't born till probably I'm like 10 years older than them, so they wasn't born till a few years after that. They never met him. You know what I'm saying? They was born maybe 3 or 4 years after he died. So yeah, my two sisters.
Okay, so it didn't really affect them, obviously, since they were since they weren't born yet.
Yeah, they just know him through pictures and stuff like that.
Okay. So you mentioned a little bit of being involved in the juvenile justice system. You said stealing cars, right?
Yeah, that was my first little foray into the juvenile justice system. I got caught. I went upstate for stolen car. And that was a hell of an experience. At that early age, I remember. Just being, you're 13 years old. I have a child. I have a daughter that's 17. So when I think about her when she was 13, I can't imagine her going and, you know what I'm saying? So I'm looking at myself at that age like, wow, being locked down, and well, I'm from Virginia, as soon as you come into the system, when you go upstate, it's like, it's a beef you got to be. If you from a certain area of Virginia, the Tidewater area, you got to beef with the guys from Richmond. You know what I'm saying? Then the guys from Northern Virginia, and it was like we fighting on site. And if I get a chance, we fighting like, what? This was going on? And that was the kind of environment of, the juvenile process. We just acting out. That's how it was, But I managed to excelling. I got my GED young. Some guys we could, older to get. I got it when I was, upstate. So, and I got a trade in brick and masonry. I try to, stay above the fray. And I did what I supposed to did, and I came home from that.
So besides the stealing cars and like other things, were you convicted of anything? Like, did you go to juvenile prison or did you go to juvenile detention up until you were like 17, 18, anything like that?
No, I went to juvenile prison. We call it upstate. I went to juvenile prison twice. I went up for one time for stealing cars, and then I went again for possession with intent to distribute. And I did like 8 months the first time, and did 12 months the second time. Yeah.
Okay, so that was that the extent of everything as juvenile before you turned 18?
Yeah. It's a bunch, just dealing with that. But like you said, the juvenile system, it was just chaotic back then. It seemed like it won't focus on, rehabilitation. You really had to focus on getting your GED or going to school because, all it was doing was just, you put a bunch of juveniles together, you're going to be fighting and doing violence, so that's what that was about.
So what about after turning 18, up until the case you were in prison for now? Like, what were you doing in which you were either charged with and charges were dropped and or charged with and convicted of?
Well, like I said, dealing with these things, I was living in Portsmouth, Virginia, and coming up. And I would say I always just try. I always try to get a job. My first job at KFC. I worked there for about a month or two, and I'll try to get a shot. You know what I'm saying? I know like I've never had a job in life. But, I always try to provide for my family. I had my first son when I think I was like 19. Right. And right after that, I had twins. And my youngest son, Dominique, he was a twin, Demetrius. She passed away. But around this period, so I'm trying to, get money. My whole mind tells me get money. I need to, get out these projects. We stand out project force when we got to get out of here, get my kids right, and all that. And that was my first time I went to prison for bank robbery. And I went to federal prison for bank robbery around that. That was probably around, actually the same month. Probably about a month after my first son, my youngest son was born. My mind was, I need some money. We got to get through something. I got a twin, you know what I'm saying? When my daughter ain't make it, I'm going through these things, and we just came up with this stupid idea to do that. And I actually went to federal prison behind that. Did 7 years of federal prison.
And what was the first bank robbery in just state prison? How many years was that?
No, that was the first one. My first, and only bank robbery charge. I got sent to 7 years of federal prison.
What made it federal?
Well, banks, if a bank is federally insured, it's the FDIC or something like that. If a bank is insured by the federal government, if you rob that bank, they're going to give you a federal case. You know what I'm saying? The feds can pick it up. Rarely, in some cases, they decide not to pick it up. But usually, a bank robbery that's insured, a bank that's insured by the federal, you will get a federal charge for that.
Okay, and I'm assuming you used like a pew-pew while doing the bank robbery?
Yep. And all that's, at that time, all that's mandatory. They give you the mandatory, if you don't have a violent background, which I didn't at the time, it was mandatory 3 years. And I got, I think, 7 for the bank robbery, which was a 10-year sentence altogether, and I ended up doing 7, getting out on good behavior.
Do you remember how much money you got away with, or did you not get away with anything until the cops showed up?
No, we actually got away with some money. You know, it was funny because in the newspaper article about it, you know, they said that, you know, they should give us, you know, they got all the jokes. They said they should give us a money laundering charge because during the process of the bank robbery, the dot pack went off, you know, and the dot pack got, you know, it's a bunch of money they had down on it. So we was in the house trying to, you know, put some dish detergent on the, you know, money trying to clean. All of that actually was working. You know, it was coming off. So we got away, you know, we got to the apartment we was in. We was in there trying to clean some of the money off. Some of the money didn't got back on it. And somebody just, I think somebody in the neighborhood just pointed like, I think some special guys were in this building right here. You know what I'm saying? So what happened, the police surrounded the whole complex. And they just went apartment, checking each apartment, you know. And it was funny because I just kept looking out the window, and I was like, every time I look out the window, I see a police car. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, man, I think there's house surrounded, man. You know? So the whole time they were just tightening the neck on us. And, yeah, that's how it went down for that. But we definitely got away for a little while. It wasn't for the whole day. It was like, you know, for a few hours.
So was the money you got away with, was that all messed up from the die, or was there any that you got away with that wasn't like tainted or whatever?
No, yeah, it was like some of it was messed up by the die, and me and my co-defendant, you know, who was eventually, as we go on to the interview, you know, which was one of my friends I grew up with, you know, we hear more about him. But anyway, you know, he tried to. We already knew about the dot pack. You know, we did a research like, you know, you can't get money from a certain register. You know, you got to get it from. It's like a little thing under the register. So we like, don't get no money out of the register. But a guy that was with us, you know, one of my co-defendants on there, he was taking money and putting it in his coat instead of putting it, you know, just trying to stash some extra money for himself later. You know, being greedy. And as we coming out of the bank, you know, them dot packs, they got like a perimeter, like the distance that you get away from the bank, that makes it go off. You know what I'm saying? So, unbeknownst to us, you know, a dot pack is more than just dye. It's like pepper spray. So we get in the car, man got pepper spray and dot spewing out his jacket, like, yo, man, you know what I'm saying? So we end up not even going where we was trying to go. We end up having to take a detour and go, you know, to his house, you know. So that was like the beginning of the end right there.
And you said you got 7 years?
Yeah. Well, I did 7 years. It was like 10 years altogether. You do 85%, and you can get a few months off for taking a drug program or something like that. You know what I'm saying? You get, you know, you don't get you get 85%. If you get charges, that's a much good time you get. You know what I'm saying? So let's say for 10 years, you do 8 years.
So is that 85% on everything, whether it's like assault or RICO or whatever? Like, is that 85% on every single crime? They don't like discriminate against any crimes?
No, that's it. Yeah, that's any crime. But like I said, you have to do good time, so you can't be getting charges. Like say if you go into prison, you catch the charges. You can do 100%. You know, the good time only comes with you got to stay a year charge free, and they'll give you 85% for that year. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but like I said, the Fed, you know, the federal, you know, in the federal prison, you around guys from all over the country. You know what I'm saying? And it's the federal prison, you know how they say prison is a microcosm of society. Federal prison is the white sit on this side, and the black sits on this side, and the Hispanic sits over here. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, you know, when I'm coming in the system, I'm like, what's going on here? You know what I'm saying? And gangs, and you know what I'm saying? You know, the racial gangs, the Aryan Nation, all that type of stuff, and there's a whole bunch going on there.
So were you in a camp or were you in FCI?
I was in a USP.
Oh wow.
I went to USP Lee. I went to the USP Edgefield, South Carolina, and USP Atlanta. You know, that's right in the middle of Atlanta, downtown Atlanta. Like a castle right in the middle of the city.
Atlanta and Lee are pretty bad from what I hear then, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Did you
Yeah,
ever have any like run-ins with anybody from like the mafia at Atlanta or the Lee, like any terrorists or
oh
anything
yeah.
like that?
Yeah. Yeah, you running into mafia guys all the time in the feds, it's funny because one of them was my guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, this guy you just get to know in the pod with you. And you know how, a lot of times we see movies about mafia guys, they characterize a slick back head, a gold chain. And it's funny because they just like that. It looks just like that. You know what I'm saying? Talking shit to everybody. And you would think, but they separate themselves from the other white guys. Because the thing about the Italians, they don't like nobody. You know what I'm saying? You can't say, I don't like black people. No, they don't like black people. They don't like white people. They don't like nobody. They just like you individually. So you might be cool with them individually. And they talking shit, you know what I'm saying? They talking trash to each other. But I met a lot of them in the federal prison.
Dang, that's crazy. I talked to one guy actually at Florence right now, Photios Geis. Did you ever know him? Geis, it's Geas. He allegedly was the guy that unalived Whitey Bulger in Coleman.
Okay, nah, I don't think I met him. Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, yeah. He was I think he was convicted. Like he hasn't been in prison, but maybe 20 years, if that, in the feds. But he's a mafia unaliver, or so he claims. And I guess it's been backed up actually by other guys that have been made men.
Oh yeah, that's definitely, you know what I'm saying. That's definitely a part of that. Because the difference between the Fed and the state, in my view, being in the state system now, the Feds is like organized. Like you got to be a part of something. Like you can't just be, I'm by myself, I'm gonna do my thing. Because literally, let's say if you're a white guy and you just, I'm just gonna just do me, man. I'm not gonna get involved in nothing. The white groups will literally force you.
You have 1 minute remaining
on the game. You know what I'm saying? And the same thing with the black guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to join a gang necessarily, but it's gonna be based on where you from. If you're from Virginia, this is gonna be your crew. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna be with the guys from Virginia. If you're from Florida, you're gonna be with the guys from Florida. And the feds, everybody got a number on their shirt when you first come in, so everybody know where you from. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, dudes down on you before you even get to the building that you're going to.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna call right back.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is like you don't have to join a gang in the feds, but from what you're saying and from what I've heard, right, is if you don't stick with your own race, then they basically throw you to the wolves, and people from your own race and other races basically get to like own you and punk you out all the time, and you can't do anything about it unless you're in PC, right?
Yeah. It's just like, you're gonna get with your, especially now I was in the USP, you know what I'm saying? So in the USP, it's a very strict no snitching code. Like they literally used to check everybody's paperwork your first day on the yard, to figure out where you from. Okay, then go, okay, this your homeboys right here. When you get with your homeboys, they go check your paperwork. And I remember my experience, like when I first got there, like, where you from? Virginia, okay. Yeah, your guys right here. This is here. So I tap in with the guy that's from Virginia. And the first thing, like, yeah, you got your paperwork with you. And at that time, you got your PSI, your pre-sentence report there. You know what I'm saying? It basically tell everything about your case. So, I'm like, I don't know, y'all got, let me see y'all pre-sentence report too. You know what I'm saying? So everybody bring their paperwork out. We'll sit at the table. We'll check everything out. Check them out. They check me out. And once they know I'm solid, give you a big bag of commissary, give you PSP. You know what I'm saying? You here. You know what I'm saying? You here then. So that's how the feds went, man. But I think to me, I stayed above the freight, and I didn't have no, negative experience as far as dealing with that type of stuff. Because, I stayed out of there. You know what I'm saying? My whole thing, I was trying to get home to my sons, and at this time, it was just, it was young, and I was like, man, I ain't, this type of stuff. It's real easy to get into it.
Right. So, do you know anything about WITSEC when it comes to the feds?
What is it?
Like witness protection?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know nothing about that. Like I said, I was in the USP. So one no witness protection. We don't know, me, I'm Muslim. That's get my background. My father was Muslim, and I was raised up in that. And so when I got deep into that, and a lot of times the feds was a lot of good, sharp brothers. That was around us. So we was really on it. And it's like for some reason I ain't know why. So I can't explain to this day. The Iron Nation or these white supremacist dudes is like they think the Muslims like it's like they the arch enemy. Even if it wasn't actually the case, that's what everybody thought. So people kind of pitted us. It was like, Muslims is a big group, and they kind of pitted us against each other. So anyway, when you said that, it made me think about, the USP. I remember we had got in a situation with them where one of them, they would get like tattoos and stuff if they hit a black person. They say you point somebody, whatever you do, they get like right for that. So anyway, one of my brothers was getting out of the shower, whatever, he's slipping, he got his shower shoes on, dude catch him, boom, hit him. Right in front of police, go to the hole. Police see him, lock him up, go to the hole. So the next day we like, yo, y'all got what's going on with y'all? This with y'all, like y'all want to smoke or something, They like, no, we ain't call that. It was like we didn't order that right there. He did it on his own. Y'all gotta fix that. So they actually got dude, hit in the hole. In the hole. The next day, see the people running down there, they come to dude all messed up, like, wow, okay. Like it's really nowhere that you can hide in the USP. Now, as far as like the FCIs and the low security thing, that's what I think. That's what a lot of witness protection goes on at. But the USP ain't nothing going on up there.
Right. The only reason I ask because I have a friend, right, that's like an ex-offender, and he did a FOIA request. You know what FOIA is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he did a
No,
FOIA.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so it's the Freedom of Information Act, and basically you can FOIA like cases, prisons, so on and so forth. So he FOIA'd Florence Admax, Colorado, where Chapo is, Fort Hoover was, so on and so forth, and they denied him because they said there's like a dozen to 24 inmates there that are in witness protection, and if the inmates there find out, the guards might either set them up or the inmates might find them and catch them slipping or whatever, So I was just curious if you knew about that because I know where Hoover was. There's a lot of high-profile snitches that have put a lot of like mafia guys away, a lot of gangsters and BMF and all those dudes,
Especially like you talking about, okay, Florence like a whole different, That's like the super max. Like they'll put you up there, you can't get, Like I know some guys that was up there. It's like even if you, it's hard to get to somebody up there, so they can definitely put people that's in witness protection up there.
Right.
But dudes still to get it up there though. They find a way up there. It happens up there.
Right. Yeah. Where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, if you're doing life because of somebody and you find out they're somewhere, I mean, what are they going to do? Sentence you to death when you're already doing life in prison?
Yeah. That's the thing about the Fed system. If you look at a lot of cases, a lot of guys already doing life. So they'll take, they rarely give you the death penalty for killing another inmate. They just might give you another life sentence. They don't care about that. So that's what kind of made it real dangerous, especially for me. I didn't have a life sentence. I had 10 years. So I'm in the USP because my child was violent, being a bank robber. You know what I'm saying? So it's like my whole thing was just if I ain't gonna let nobody do nothing to me, I am gonna try to, you know what I'm saying? Like you gotta just have that mentality. I'm gonna protect myself. I'm going home to my mom, my kids. You know what I'm saying? It was going down all over the place up there.
Right. Yeah, no, that's understandable for sure. So, moving on to your current case, tell me about your current case, how that came about, what you were sentenced to, what you were originally projected to be sentenced to, and what you were sentenced to, if you can remember all that in order.
Okay, yeah, no doubt. So when I came home from the federal prison, everything was beautiful. Had my head together. My son's mother, is a good place. We had our own house and, cars and all that type of stuff. I moved in with her, ended up getting a good job, just start my life, you know what I'm saying? And I say after almost probably about a year thing, we started, our relationship started getting rocky. And, we chose to go our different ways or whatever, right? So this is how it happened for me in my current case. So, when I started realizing now, I'm not coming back, she stopped letting me see my kids, and it was just like it started like a custody battle. She had went to the child support people and told the people that my kids was in daycare, right? My kids was in elementary school at the time. They was, going to school every day, right? So, but all you need is a receipt from somebody. Oh, I get somebody sign. Yeah, I run a daycare and I watch them in daycare. So anyway, she just had that something she just made up, and the court made me stop paying $1,200 a month for child support because I already had making the most money to pay the daycare. So, he was like, she's paying $300 a week for daycare. So they add all that up, boom, they add that with the child. So now it was like, what, and I used to be like, oh, what you doing? You know what I'm saying? She basically trying to blackmail me. I mean, if you come back home, I'll drop it. If you just thought what you doing, come back home, And I'm not one of the guys that, if you blackmail me, it's not going to go how you think. You know what I'm saying? That's one of my things I think, from the tragedy that happened in my childhood, is like made me, it's like more post, like, you know what I'm saying? If you put somebody certain when you think they're going to do something, I'll do the opposite. So it's like, I did not react well to that. I'm like, okay, my whole thing was, okay, I'm going to get a lawyer, right? And prove that, the child support was fraudulent, the daycare was a made up thing. All they do is get school records there, elementary school there, and daycare all day. So that was my plan. But a lawyer costs. A lawyer will cost you $5,000, $7,500. You know what I'm saying? At that time, I'm working at a shipyard. I'm barely getting back, with the child support, with my apartment, with my car payment, all that type of stuff. So in that environment, I think that was one of the worst mistakes I made. I came up with the dumb idea to start hustling. It's something I know how to do from growing up. I can get on. I can, what I'm saying, make enough money to pay for a lawyer. I can prove that she was lying about the child support, the daycare thing, and I'm trying to get custody of my kids for somebody trying to manipulate the system. In my mind, all that's coming in if I can get a lawyer. So that's how I started hustling. Right, that's the environment where I started hustling right there. And everybody who knows about the drug, about this type of that game right there is, you can say you can stop at a certain point, right? But it's like, I'm gonna get $10,000, well, I might get $20,000. And it turns into an actually time thing, where if it take me a week to make $10,000, in 2 weeks I made $20,000. You know what I'm saying? So you start trying to calculate and justify what I can do to get this summer in. I'm trying to calculate and justify what I can do to get this summer in. If I can get this summer in, I can get $40,000. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and unfortunately, with the viewers, will set you up. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened to me. Some guy, probably had caught a charge himself. And told me to meet him. He wanted to buy some, a rug, and the whole time he was a confidential informant. So, the time when I got busted, I never forget it, because as I'm riding down, as I'm rolling off from him, I go into this neighborhood, and I see a car coming behind me, and it's kind of like swerving. So I'm thinking at this time I had a nice truck with the rims on and stuff like that. So I'm thinking there's somebody trying to rob me, like he's trying to carjack me or something. So, I'm kind of bracing for that. And when I get to the stop sign, I see a K9 truck across the street. So I make a left. And as soon as I did that, the knocks pull up on me, and it was like, I see some on the TV, and some more big guy SUVs, and that guy jumped out the car, like literally while my car still moving, like laying on my car with the gun like right in my face, like stop the car, stuff like that. So at this time, it's like, man, I can see the bullet in the gun. You know what I'm saying? That's how close it was. And at that time in Portsmouth, I remember the same knocks. They had killed like two other guys. They'll say, this is what they do. They say you trying to hit them with the car. You know what I'm saying? They done jumped on the car while I was running. You know what I'm saying? So my whole thing was, okay, I put the car apart, put my hands in the air. I didn't want them to think I'm reaching for nothing. You know, and I know, in the expedition, once you put the car in drive, the door is automatic. So now I got my hands in the air. They're like, open the effing door. They cussing them in. So I'm like, I'm looking at him like, man, I'm not even putting this guy right here. He look like he can't wait to shoot. So they bust the car, bust the windows out, snatched out the car and all that type of stuff. And yeah, man, that was my last day on the street right there. It's like I was just trying to survive. So you see some people, people just look trigger happy. So that was my last day on the street right there. And what happened after that is they found in the back of the car, they found a little green in there, right? So that's what led to the initial arrest. All right, that's when they took my car downtown. They couldn't find anything at that time. But guess their CIA confidential informant told like, yeah, this guy got drugs in it. So they just started breaking the car down. They took it to like one of their little. They got a garage, and they get their tools, and they end up finding the drugs in the stash box in the car. What they did, they found an ounce, probably like an ounce and a half of snow in there, and they found a gun in there, a Bluetooth, So they found that in there, and I'll never forget it because I'm sitting there handcuffed to a chair, right? And they come to me like, yeah, we got you, man. It's over with. They was like, we'll let you go right now. He approached me with the handcuff keys. Ready, let me go. He said, all you gotta do is give me an unaliving or, give me some snow. Give me your connection. So at that time, it was like I was just tired, man. I didn't want to continue, putting people in the cell. I didn't want to be a part of putting somebody else in the prison. That was going on in my head at that time. And I was like, it ain't with me. That's what my mind was saying. That's what my heart was feeling like, man. I'm not, getting nobody else in this situation. And I told him, I was like, give me a bond, man. Give me a bond or give me a bump. Take me to the jail. And they were so mad about that because so many people probably that sat in that same chair before me rolled. And instead of just, taking responsibility, I got somebody I can just, and they just continue the system. They just continue feeling the belly of the beast. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. Yeah.
So after you were convicted, what was your original sentencing guidelines, and what did you actually get sentenced to?
Well, like I said, I was eventually convicted of that. And, Virginia, once you get convicted of a felony, give you what's called a pre-sentence report. And my I'll never forget, I had my lawyer at that time. She was like, I'm probably going to give you 10 years. You got a record, but it's really not that bad. Some guys have been in prison two or three times. So she was like, you're probably going to get 10 years. And, and at this time, my daughter's mom was pregnant. She was probably like 7 months pregnant. So, I'm devastated about that. I'm like, wow, man, can't go, prison on it. So the day of my sentence, when I'm in the courtroom, I got a Judge Kills. Now that time in Portsmouth, Judge Kills, he was old 20 years before. Like he been old. Like he seemed like he always been old. Like when he sentenced me, he had to be 90s, in his 90s or something like that. So I'm sitting there in the courtroom, and as he's talking to me in my sentencing, he's not even talking to me, he's talking to the crowd. And he was saying, like, this whole courtroom is in for drugs. You know what I'm saying? And drugs and all.
You have 1 minute remaining.
As he's talking, his face is getting red. So I never forget, I knew a guy that was in the courtroom. Let me see somebody call me. I said, what's up? He walked out. He was like, man, I seen dudes just getting mad, hyping this stuff up. He walked out. He was like, he caught a failure to appeal. He just didn't want to get sentenced that day. He had charged too. So he literally just walked out the courtroom and caught a failure to appeal. But the judge sentenced me to 41 years and 6 months in prison. He gave me 35 years for the drugs, 5 for the gun, and 1 year for the marijuana. So yeah, that was crazy. He went 25 years outside my guideline. With the phone about to hang up, I'm gonna call you back.
So you said he went 25 years past the sentencing guidelines. So
yeah.
so you said you got 40. Was it 45 or 46?
41.
Or 41. So what would that be? 16 or 26 years? Is that right?
Yeah. So like my maximum was 17. Right? You know what I'm saying? So, that's at least 20 years outside of that. You know what I'm saying? 20 some change. But the mid-range, where they was supposed to send me to like 12 years, my lowest, like, you would get 10 years. So I went from thinking in my mind in the courtroom, we get 10 years in prison for a drug charge, right? To get, to walking out that courtroom with 41 years. And, that's what I've been dealing with ever since then. That was 17 years and 6 months ago, and right now I've just been, working toward my freedom, and it just took a lot, because, when you're dealing with that type of sentence for that type of crime, first, the first thing I had to do, man, was just learn how to forgive myself. I was so ashamed for, going back to prison after getting a second chance. My family was so proud of me for getting a job, going to school, getting on my feet, getting an apartment, just doing the things that you're supposed to do, and they didn't know. I was hustling on the, on the low, you know what I'm saying? They didn't know nothing about that, It's funny that, I want to sidetrack a little bit that, my father, right, he has a show that come online, come on TV, actually, come on WGN called Poolside Cooking. They just had a show. They take the lab up here at Lawrenceville Corrections Center. It should be on TV Sunday. Come on Sunday morning, 8:30. Anyway, shameless plug. Anyway, so me and my dad always been real cool, And he used to ask me, like, what I'm saying, like, what's going on? You need, I'm like, my pride wouldn't let me, man. I'm going through it, man. I need some help. I'm like, I got him good. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to get his papers, his lawyer, save my money up. The whole time, hustling on the low. And, when you're doing this, it's not like you stand on the corner, you're doing these things. You actually just meet somebody, they catch you, hit you on your phone, you meet them somewhere, boom, that's it. So I was able to keep it secret. So that's why, when that happened, it was just like devastating to my family. What a lot of shame on, like, man, I had to do a lot of apologizing, but it wasn't even them that, it was me. I had to forgive myself. You know what I'm saying? I was so ashamed of, catching that. And I think what helped me the most was my daughter. At that time, she was just a baby. You know what I'm saying? She was just born. My daughter's 17 years old now. honor student, entrepreneur, got our own little business, doing great. We got a great relationship. At that time, she was just a little baby. So I remember holding her in the visiting room. I used to hold her in the visiting room, and she used to look at me. You know, when you see the baby, they look straight in your eyes, and you see the baby the bottom. And she used to look at me, and I used to like, man, I can't let this, you know what I'm saying? I can't let her be ashamed, the shame transfer to her. You know what I'm saying? I gotta be somebody to make her proud of me. I gotta do things to make her proud of me. So I just focus on, educating myself, staying out of trouble, just trying to reform myself. Why did I fall back to that? Like, what made me deal with that? What made me fall back to surgery? What made me prone to do these things? We start, taking mental health classes and understanding, like, adverse childhood experiences called ACE. What I'm saying? How these things that my past led to, me having what you like, being risky or impulsive. You know what I'm saying? Like, these things trying to cover up pain that you go through as a child and stuff like that. So I had to basically, man, just look real deep within myself and not give up on myself, because having a 41-year sentence, at 30 years of age, that's like a life sentence for real. So 17 years forward, fast forward, I'm here at Lawrenceville, and I don't know if you heard too much about Lawrenceville. This is the first incentivized prison in Virginia. So what they did, they started like you couldn't even get here unless you 5 years charge free, and they just had like handpicked, guys that stayed out of trouble, and they give us extra programs and stuff like that, opportunities, and they try to make an environment where other guys that can kind of like inspire other guys to stay out of trouble and to do the right thing to come to places like this. So I got a clemency in, and I'm just trying to get support for that, because we know people get over sentenced for nonviolent crimes. And my crime, I know it's an effect to my crime. I'm not trying to escape the responsibility of it. It's an effect, but the people that's hurt most in my crime is my family. You know what I'm saying? Like my mother, my father, my children. You know what I'm saying? Like, my community. You know what I'm saying? So these things right here, this is, what affected me the most. It's hurting them, letting them down and stuff like that. So the good thing is, I got a clemency in, and hopefully, God willing, they can grant it to me. They can see that, I've been out of trouble, taking programs, schooling, just walking the right path, trying to be an example for the younger guys. Because, I got a story to tell them, you know what I'm saying? I done been there. I done been one of the guys who been home, got released from prison. I let them know, like, one of the things, man, you want to be careful about, your relationships you get into. You know what I'm saying? A lot of guys they want to live directly, immediately with another woman, with a woman. It don't matter if you know my child, I knew her for years, but I tell guys, you need your own space. You need to, start from the basics. Don't be so quick to jump into somebody else.
So going back like a decade, it was a decade, right, that you were implicated in an unaliving that the charges were dropped, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was 90, was it 96 or 98?
90, I think it was 98.
98. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought I read. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me how you got implicated in an unaliving, which later the charges were dropped. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, like I said, by the grace of God, the charges were dropped. I didn't have anything to do with it, but we was actually giving a guy a ride home at this time. It was 4 of us in the car, and we giving this one guy a ride home. So, as we giving a ride home, we stopped at a gas station, and that guy, my same co-defendant that was on, that was on the federal case with me. This before we even went to the federal. You know what I'm saying? Before we went to federal prison, and he decided to get out of the car. I was like, man, I'm gonna use the bathroom. He gets out the car. He's out of the car for like 5 minutes. We in there smoking a blunt. We didn't even think about it. And he comes back to the car running like, yo, man, pull up. Like, what's up? He was like, man, you know what I'm saying? I just robbed somebody. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? What? Everybody like, what? Yeah, man, I seen him pull over. I seen him reach him. I seen him reach him. So, yeah. And I never forget it that night. I looked at him, I was like, bro, like, what you know what I'm saying, man? You going, this something, you going to have to deal with this for the rest of your life, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that ain't going to never go nowhere, So, yeah, right there, ain't nobody say nothing. Everybody just, kept their mouth shut. And fast forward 10 years, it's after we come home from the federal prison. And, people start, speaking about it. I think one of the guys in the car had caught a case. He was trying to get out of prison. So, he had spoke about it. And they pull up on me, right? And that's how I get charged with it. The detectives pull up on me and was like, it's unalive, right? If you don't make a statement, if you're not willing to testify, make a statement, we're going to charge you with it. And I guess, this is the way, they put pressure on guys, you know what I'm saying? And me, I'm like, the guy, he was like, my son and son was best friends. And I didn't want to be a part of that. I was like, man, listen, I don't know what he's talking about. I said, man, talk to my lawyer. I'm on the lawyer, and I gave my lawyer number to talk to. So in his part, he was like, man, I know you think, since you ain't had nothing to do with it, I know you think I can't charge you, but I can charge you with this. That's the last thing he said to me. And I said, probably about, not even a month after I caught this drug charge, they charged me with that. So I probably could have, hindsight is 2020. I probably could have told them the information about that and got out of prison altogether. Sometimes I remember I had a conversation with my son. My sons are grown now. They're 27, 28 years old. And my son was like, Dad, why didn't you just say it? You know what I'm saying? Why didn't you just say something? You'd been home. You probably would have did a date. And it's like, I always try to tell them, like, man, you got to be responsible for yourself, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would never want to put another man in the situation because of me. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. You know what I'm saying? So, it's kind of hard for them to understand it, but it's like, I didn't want to absolve my responsibility, So, yeah, that's what happened on that. But, they end up, they charged me, you know what I'm saying? They kept trying to get me to make a statement and all that type of stuff. And I was like, man, listen, the only thing I had them do, they ended up dropping the charges. But the guy was eventually convicted. The other guys in the car ended up testifying, and they convicted the guy who did it. And the crazy part about that, he actually got less time than I got for the drug charge. He got 26 years for the murder charge. I ended up getting 41 years for the drug charge.
So let's say hypothetically, right? You knew back then you were going to get the sentence you got.
And all the, watching my kids grow up, man, and the family members that passed away on these 17 years and the things I went through, man, I probably did anything not to do this time. You know what I'm saying? If I could go back, I'll probably do anything not to do this like this. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, I've been going 17 years. My daughter was born while I'm in prison. She's 17 years old now, So, yeah, I probably did, in hindsight, man, you don't want to go through this. You know what I'm saying? That's how things worked out. And hopefully I can use my story to this is what I want to do when I come home, I want to use my story, man, to educate at-risk youth on adverse childhood experiences, things that they went through as a child, how they might behave or act out behind because of that. Sometimes you don't understand why you do the things you do. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes things that you've been through as a child can affect how you act, how you behave, how you see the world, and so on and so forth. So I definitely want to be a part of that, and you know, help, at-risk youth with that. And the good thing is I got a hearing. I have an interview with the clemency board, the people that investigate clemency on the 29th. So, all the viewers, man, y'all make a prayer for me, man. Hopefully, God willing, they can give me this clemency and I can return to my family soon. Because 17 years, man, for a charge that, I had no victim in my crime. I didn't, I don't have another person that was harmed in my crime. It was nobody house getting broke into, it was nobody robbed, it was nobody, property stolen. It was just me possessing from drugs. And I'm not trying to minimize it, but 41 years, like, what we doing? As a society, what we doing? We try to take a man's life for that right there, for a mistake, a lapse in judgment, So, yeah, man, hopefully things will go right, man. I get this clemency.
So let's say you do get the clemency, right? What are you gonna do to make sure you don't lose more years on your life than you already have for those 17 years to not go back to prison?
Yeah. Well, great question, man. And I got a lot of things I'm planning on. I got a nonprofit that I'm working on. I was really big in boxing. You know what I'm saying? I train guys and stuff like that. And I think I got an organization I'm trying to, put together called Building Through Boxing, right? So what I want to do is I want to have something for the youth, right? You know what I'm saying? Especially at-risk youth. From the poor community, might be black or white or whatever religious denomination, because I think that when you teach someone, especially a child, at present age, how to defend themselves, how to box, right? How to defend themselves, how to fight, that gives them confidence. When they don't have to project aggression to keep people off of them. You know what I'm saying? Give them confidence. Once somebody know how to box, they laid back. They know they can do to you. So I want to incorporate that with, mental health awareness and just real talk coming from somebody who's been through it. You know what I'm saying? Because I think, a lot of the things that's going on the street with the youth today, I really do believe that they need somebody that really care about them. You can't just come out there preaching to them. You got to show them that you're willing to invest your time, your money, and helping them out. So that's one of the things I want to do. Like I said, my father, he got a TV show, Poolside Cooking, and I'm gonna try to be a part of that. As far as working, my sons, they are entrepreneurs. They got they're almost 28, almost 30 years old now. One 28, one 27. They got like a party boat company where they take people out on the river. You can rent that, what I'm saying? They take people out there. So it's a lot of business ventures I want to get into, but my passion is to help them youth, man, because I was a troubled youth. You know what I'm saying? I needed psychological help, therapy, and all that type of stuff. So I want to try to catch these guys and these girls before they get into major trouble and see if I can help them out that way.
That's good. That's a good idea. I'm sure that'll help you to where you don't reoffend and don't end up back in prison and end up with statistics and the recidivism.
Absolutely. And again, man, I'm just getting up there now too. You know what I'm saying? 48 years old, because I've been there.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Duration, but it's not like being present. So that's my goal right now, just to be present in my kids' life, be present in my mother's life, my father's life, my fiance's life, just be present out there. So, man, I really appreciate you giving me the time, man, to tell my story, man. And y'all get to change.org, and hopefully y'all can support my clemency petition. It's under my name, and I'm sure Ashley will give you the link to it. And I appreciate you, man. Absolutely, man. I hope we can do this interview on the other side of the fence, too.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. We definitely will. I got you as soon as you get out.
No doubt, man. Well, you take care, man. All y'all viewers, man. Y'all reach out, man. We're going to try to change this culture, man, of overseeing people nonviolent. And try to.
Thank you for using GTL.